Who would have thought that the mighty Crown Prince Eric would be completely blindsided by a letter? Alisa made it crystal clear. She left to fulfill a promise she made a long time ago. The letter even helped him recall how he used to treat her, constantly pushing her away, swearing he'd rather die than marry her. He'd say he'd rather eat raw carrots than see her face. He even threatened to join a monastery just to escape the engagement. Looking at these old grievances, even Eric was stunned. Did I really say those things? Since you hate marriage so much, I'll just disappear completely. It must have been exhausting for you to deal with me all these years. Reading that, Eric finally realized that things had truly gone too far. The letter ended with just one sentence. Congratulations, you are finally free. Those words were like a dagger to the heart. Eric gripped the letter so hard he couldn't say a word. He used to want to avoid her, but now that she was actually gone, he panicked. Less than a month after the new emperor's coronation, Alisa, who was supposed to be the crown princess, had vanished. No one knew where she went. She left behind only a resolute shadow and a breakup letter that left him filled with regret. He was truly free now, but this wasn't the kind of freedom she wanted. The scene shifts back to the ruins from years ago. Everywhere you looked, there were crumbling walls, and the air felt heavy with death. Amidst this desolation, the emperor stopped in his tracks. He spotted a child huddled in a corner, covered in dirt, with only her silver hair standing out. The emperor knelt down, his voice softer than ever. Child, are you willing to come with me? He reached out his hand, offering the desperate little girl a chance to survive. He gently took her small hand and pulled the frail girl into his arms. His movements were clumsy, but they gave her the sense of security she needed most. The emperor asked gently, Child, what is your name? The girl didn't say a word for a long time. It was awkward. He even wondered if she didn't understand the language. Just then, the girl finally spoke. She said, My name is Princess. The emperor paused, thinking to himself, there were no princesses in neighboring countries who looked like her. She was probably so spoiled at home that she was always called that, and she'd forgotten her real name. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile, playing along. What a coincidence. Then I guess I'm the emperor. Looking at this helpless child in his arms, he suddenly had an idea. Since you can't remember your old name, from today on, you'll be called Alisa. How do you like that name? The girl stared at him blankly, as if she hadn't processed this new identity yet. For the first time since she started wandering, someone was giving her a home. She nodded slightly and whispered, Okay. News of Emperor Bernhard's triumphant return spread across the empire. The citizens cheered to welcome their hero home, but no one expected that inside that grand carriage sat a lone, surviving girl. The appearance of this mysterious girl turned the peaceful palace upside down. Nobles whispered behind her back. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said Alisa was the emperor's illegitimate daughter. Others claimed she was the descendant of a lost royal line. The theories grew more outrageous by the day. In the palace, anyone who dared to slight Alisa would be fired immediately. The emperor wouldn't allow anyone to mistreat her. To make her comfortable, he even gifted her a private palace. This level of favoritism left the entire nobility stunned. Now, wherever Alisa went, she was surrounded by respectful servants. In this palace, no one dared to boss her around, except for one person. From a high window, a pair of eyes was fixed on her. Alisa just wanted to read her book in peace, but the young prince, Eric, insisted on picking a fight. He shouted arrogantly, Stop following me, you're so annoying. He even added with a condescending tone, Since I'm in a good mood, hurry back to your room, your highness. Alisa didn't even look up, switching straight to savage mode. She said, Are you a bit delusional? Who wants to follow you? Besides, you're nothing special to look at. You're not worth stalking. That comment made Eric jump with rage. He pointed at Alisa and roared, How dare you speak to me like that? Didn't your etiquette teacher teach you to use honorifics? I'm a prince. My status is much higher than yours. Alisa replied slowly, Books say honorifics are for people worth respecting. As for you. The situation flipped. Eric, who wanted to flaunt his status, didn't gain any ground and was left speechless. Alisa went on the offensive. She stared at the prince and said, word for word, Your Highness, I don't respect you at all. The impact was so strong that Eric broke down. He shouted, Why? I'm going to inherit the throne. Everyone must respect the emperor. Facing this childish tantrum, Alisa didn't even blink. She replied coldly, When you actually become emperor, I'll consider using honorifics. Watching Eric throw a fit, she even sighed and muttered to herself, I'm so worried about the future of this country. If you're the heir, I guess I have no choice. Eric had never been insulted like this. He complained to his nanny, She doesn't talk like an 8-year-old at all. She sounds like an old woman. Alisa countered with a lethal blow, And you sound exactly like a 5-year-old brat. The final blow was the most painful. Alisa looked at him, expressionless, and dropped a bomb. I finally understand why everyone says you're such an annoying person behind your back. Eric lost it. He pointed at Alisa and yelled, If it weren't for my father, you wouldn't even have a name. I hate people like you the most. Facing this humiliation, Alisa just calmly turned a page of her book and replied, Your Highness, actually, I don't like you that much either. She looked up at the young prince, her voice completely flat. You can rest easy. I've never thought about becoming like you, and I've never thought about being your equal. These words left Eric stunned. He expected her to argue or cry, but what she said next sent a chill down his spine. To me, staying here is just about surviving. Eating, sleeping, even breathing, it's all just to stay alive. Alisa knew very well that as an outsider, no matter what others said, she had to pretend she didn't care, because once she fought back, the trouble would only fall on her. But she didn't want to endure it anymore. She closed her book, looked at Eric, and said, "I'm tired." Before he could react, she added, "And it's because you keep talking to me that I'm so tired." Eric was left completely dumbfounded, just as he wanted to ask where she got her book. A voice called their names from behind. Just as the two were at a stalemate, the Emperor appeared. He looked at the two children and smiled. "It seems you two are getting along quite well." Before Eric could greet him, Alisa exposed the truth. "We aren't getting along at all." The Emperor clearly didn't expect the girl to be so blunt. Alisa added, "Because His Highness hates me very much." The Emperor gave his son a meaningful look. He placed his hands on their shoulders, his tone gentle but carrying undeniable pressure. He said, "I hope you two can get along. After all, you have a long-term relationship to maintain when you grow up." Who would have thought the Emperor's next words would be like a thunderclap to the children? He said, "You two must get married in the future." The air seemed to freeze. The two who were just arguing were now completely paralyzed, unable to say a word. Eric exploded, shouting at the top of his lungs that he would never marry Alisa. In his eyes, it was absurd and illogical. But Alisa didn't even look up. She just sighed calmly and asked if he was an idiot. Alisa thought the marriage was just a joke the Emperor made. Who knew Eric would take it seriously? Eric panicked. He knew his father kept his word, so he tried to drag Alisa into it, hoping she'd help him find a way to refuse the engagement. But Alisa didn't take the bait. Instead, she leaned in and asked, "Aren't you angry that I just called you an idiot?" Eric stammered, saying he was used to being scolded. He had no temper left. Alisa watched him for a moment, then threw a curveball. "Do you really hate me?" That one question left Eric speechless. Facing Alisa's pressure, Eric kept acting tough, even threatening that he'd rather die than marry her. But Alisa wasn't angry. She said calmly that whether they married or not didn't matter to her, because she didn't hate him. Before Eric could react, Alisa dropped another bombshell. "If the day comes when we really have to marry, I will choose to disappear completely." That sentence hit Eric like a heavy hammer. He froze. He never expected she had already planned an escape route. He stood up abruptly, demanding to know what she meant. Alisa didn't back down. She looked him in the eye and declared that she would become more outstanding than him. "When that day comes, everyone will be on my side. Compared to an Eric who only knows how to throw tantrums, people will clearly prefer me." Seeing her confident smile, Eric couldn't say a word. For the first time, he realized this girl wasn't someone he could easily control. Alisa told him that when that day arrived, she could live a brilliant life on her own, even without this marriage. This was like an invisible slap to the face, throwing Eric into chaos. He clenched his fists, his sense of crisis finally erupting. Who would have thought that to keep that childish promise from long ago, Alisa would actually leave? Eric sat alone in the empty room, filled with regret. Dante, who was summoned to the palace early in the morning, was completely stunned. He couldn't believe that Alisa, who had always stayed in the palace, had disappeared for no reason. Dante tried to make excuses, thinking she might just be out for air or scared by the marriage news and would return soon. But Eric knew better. Alisa never did anything without a plan. He handed over a piece of paper for Dante to read. This wasn't a runaway. It was a long-planned farewell. Eric was filled with regret. That comment about not wanting to marry was just a childhood joke. Who knew Alisa would take it to heart? Dante read the letter and muttered, "If it was a joke, you said it enough times. Now that she's gone, what's the point of saying all this?" Joke or not, Dante knew the situation. If news of the great mage Alisa's disappearance got out, the empire would be in turmoil. The succession had just ended, and the foundation was shaky. If the opportunists found out the empire had lost its strongest shield, the consequences would be unimaginable. Looking at the silent Eric, Dante's words hit home. This was no longer a private matter. If not handled well, the whole empire would be dragged down. Eric decided immediately. Keep everyone quiet. Tell the public Alisa is on vacation, but that could only hide the truth for so long. The truth would come out eventually, so they had to find her before the news leaked. No matter where she was hiding, she had to be brought back. Dante tried to slip away, acting busy and refusing to take on the difficult task. But Eric wasn't having it. He calmly brought up the past, saying Dante loved treasure hunts as a kid, so this was right up his alley. Before Dante could react, a new communication device was shoved into his hand. Now he had no choice. Eric gave a direct order. Dante was allowed to leave the palace, but he had one mission: search the entire continent and bring Alisa back. He demanded Dante be available at all times. Seeing Eric's intense expression, Dante didn't dare say no and had to head out. Left alone in the room, Eric looked at the staff left on the table, his mind in chaos. Alisa had never left the palace alone before. This time, she didn't even take her weapon. He tried to comfort himself, thinking a great mage would be fine, but he couldn't help but think, if he really couldn't find her, he hoped she'd suffer a little out there. Only then would she understand how dangerous the world was and be willing to return. But looking at the empty room, he couldn't help but ask, "Alisa, where on earth are you hiding?" The palace is in total chaos trying to find her, but our great mage, Alisa, is just sitting in a small inn, calmly cutting her steak. She's living the good life. Jonathan, the innkeeper, fawns over her, asking if the food is to her liking, bragging about the fresh sheets, and even claiming the steak was made from lamb he picked out this morning. Seeing him act like he's waiting on royalty, Alisa remembers the day she arrived. Back then, she had no money, and this guy was ready to throw her out on the street. But the moment Alisa pulled out a magic artifact, Jonathan's attitude flipped faster than a page. He put on a professional smile and treated her like his most honored guest. Alisa never expected that trinket to be so valuable on the market, or that it could make someone so incredibly accommodating. Alisa wants to find a place to stay long-term, so she asks Jonathan if there's anywhere quiet nearby. Jonathan immediately beats his chest, promising he's got it covered. But Alisa's requirements get more and more absurd. She needs somewhere quiet, hidden from the Emperor's eyes, and most importantly, a place where she can keep an eye on the palace. Jonathan starts to sweat. This isn't just finding a place to live, it's like setting up a spy base. He tentatively asks, "Did you have a falling out with the royal family?" Alisa replies with total calm, "The Emperor doesn't like me." Jonathan freezes. He's regretting everything now. He thought he'd found a gold mine, but he's actually holding a ticking time bomb. Now, it's not just about money, he might lose his life. Jonathan decides to go all in. He promises Alisa that as long as she stays at his inn, he'll keep her hidden, even if the sky falls. He even feels a sense of pride. As an innkeeper, getting involved in such a massive, world-shaking event means his life hasn't been wasted. Alisa, seeing his resolve, reluctantly agrees. Meanwhile, Dante has followed the trail. He's at the auction house, staring at the golden item Ding Zhuo brought in, completely speechless. How could someone be so reckless? Putting a treasure with the royal crest into an auction house for cash? Isn't that just telling everyone exactly where you are? Alisa, where on earth are you hiding? It's pouring rain outside. Jonathan is working in the inn, feeling pretty good about himself. He really caught a big fish this time. Even though the girl seems a bit suspicious, she isn't on any wanted posters. The key is that the treasure she gave him is worth a fortune enough to cover the inn's expenses for months. He really hopes this god of wealth stays for a while. Even if she really is a fugitive, for the sake of the money, he's more than willing to help cover for her. Alisa suddenly speaks up. "Jonathan." That nearly scared the soul right out of him. Jonathan notices her voice sounds strange and asks if something is wrong. "Is it the rain? Are you worried about the roof leaking?" He beats his chest, promising that while the place looks run down, it's sturdy enough to handle even the worst storm. Alisa doesn't even respond. The atmosphere turns awkward instantly. Jonathan tries again. "You don't like rainy days, do you?" Alisa looks out the window and says, "The rain is fine, but I can't stand the thunder and lightning." Jonathan can't help but tease her. "I usually think of you as a heartless puppet. I didn't expect you to have such a childish side." "It's not childish," Alisa whispers. "At some point, that sound just started making me feel sick." She always felt there was a reason for it. Like the memories from when Bernhard first found her, they've all faded away. But whenever the thunder rolls, as long as Eric is by her side, it doesn't seem so unbearable. But now, there's no one left to talk to. Eric is worrying by himself when he looks up and sees Alisa standing right in front of him. He's stunned. "What are you doing breaking into my room in the middle of the night?" Alisa says calmly, "It's raining too hard outside. I have a feeling the thunder is about to start." Before Eric can react, he sees her climbing into his bed. He shouts, "Who said you could come over here?" Alisa doesn't even look back, using the Emperor as an excuse, claiming Bernhard gave her permission. To stay, Alisa offers a deal Eric can't refuse. "I'll eat all your carrots for you tomorrow." Eric is speechless, wondering what he was even expecting, but he turns to the side and grumbles, "Fine, whatever, you can stay for the night." Outside, the rain pours down. The two little rivals lie side by side, neither saying a word. The atmosphere is incredibly awkward. Eric speaks up first. "You're the one who insisted on coming here, so why does it feel like I'm the one begging you?" Alisa stares at the ceiling. Her tone is cold as an adult's. She says she hates thunder just like he hates carrots. It's just a fair trade. Eric gives up. Expecting anything from this woman was his biggest mistake. Eric gets angrier the more he thinks about it, feeling like his expectations were a waste. He kicks off the covers and yells, "Absolutely not. Get out right now." Alisa looks at him, innocent, not understanding why the prince is having another breakdown in the middle of the night. Eric is so flustered he can barely speak. He finally snaps, "I really hate you." Watching the boy about to explode, Alisa doesn't get angry. Instead, she slowly reaches out her hand. Now it's Eric's turn to be completely stunned. Just as they're bickering, a sharp metallic sound rings out. Before Eric can react, something cold embeds itself right into the headboard. He looks down and freezes. It's a dagger, glinting with a cold light. The situation is worse than expected. The guards outside have all been taken out. Before Eric can recover from the fear, Alisa grabs his collar, her voice terrifyingly calm. "Don't worry, Your Highness." Looking at the shocked Eric, Alisa finally says what's on her mind. Even though they always fight, she doesn't actually hate him at all. And that's why she doesn't want to see him die here. A massive blue magic circle covers the floor, and Alisa begins to glow with a blinding light. After the incident, Emperor Bernhard cancels all his plans and rushes back to the palace. A bloodbath follows in the capital. Every noble involved in the plot loses their head. Alisa's reputation in the palace changes completely. The looks of contempt are replaced by awe and curiosity. But in the empty library, Eric is still his usual difficult self. He stares at Alisa and says, "Every time I see you, I find you annoying." But then his tone softens, and he asks quietly, "Do you really not hate me?" Alisa keeps flipping through her book, calmly stating the reality. Who would ever give up their own privileges? So, I never expected you to actually like me. After all, that would be too greedy. But since there's no reason to hate each other, staying like this isn't so bad. She gently closes the book and makes a request. "If there are days with thunder and lightning in the future, could you please stay by my side?" Looking at the stunned Eric, Alisa offers a rare smile. "As long as you're willing to do that, I will do everything in my power to protect you." The rain pours down outside. Eric rubs his temples and asks, "How is the investigation going?" Dante brings back shocking news. A top-tier artifact appeared at a recent auction. It not only has the Empire's seal, but the magical signature is identical to Alisa's. Even if it's not a 100% match, Dante is certain it belongs to her. The problem is, it was an anonymous auction. There's no way to track the seller. They'll have to check every single place one by one. Dante complains about Eric's difficult personality while trudging through the rain. Since he's going to be busy running around, he needs to have a good meal before he starts. Dante walks in, ready to call for the owner, but he freezes. He never expected that the Alisa he's been searching for would be sitting right there, calmly eating a meal. Alisa stops what she's doing, full of confusion. Why is he here? Dante tentatively calls her name, his head full of questions. How did he even find this place? The palace steward was finally kicked out. He was sabotaging Alisa behind her back and spreading vicious rumors. A guy who tries to hurt people and can't keep his mouth shut deserves exactly what he got. Eric stands high up, looking down at Alisa, feeling conflicted. Those people actually called her a monster. But this girl is definitely a bit unusual. But she's definitely not a monster. Alisa doesn't even turn around, saying to the person behind her, "Stop hiding. I saw you a long time ago." Eric can't hide anymore. He mutters to himself, since when is there such a good-looking monster in this world? It seems that Steward Cullen was completely wrong. Not a word of truth out of him. Eric only has one thought now. A girl like Alisa belongs in the palace. It's pouring rain outside. Dante pushes the door open and is stunned. He never expected Alisa to be sitting alone in a rundown tavern like this. Dante can't help but ask, "Why are you here?" Alisa doesn't say a word. Before Alisa can react, a terrifying blue light flashes. It explodes instantly. The building is blown apart. With a burst of manic laughter, the sturdy building turns into ruins in the blink of an eye. Dante blocks her path, laughing. "Alisa, where were you planning on going? I've missed you so much." Alisa replies emotionlessly, "You know exactly why I left." To keep Jonathan from hearing, Alisa casts a sound-dampening barrier, ready to lay it all out. Dante walks forward, sneering, "I know you're quite capable." But suddenly, a ball of fire ignites in his hand. Looking at this, today, he isn't planning on letting her leave. Dante throws a fireball, and yells, "I'm not the only one who wants to see you." He knew perfectly well that these little tricks wouldn't be enough to defeat Alisa, but as long as he could stall her for a while, it would be enough. If he could just send a message to the Emperor now, that dream of a paid vacation would finally be his. Dante couldn't help but chuckle at the thought, as if he could already see his holiday waiting for him. But he was celebrating too soon. Alisa walked straight through the sea of fire and closed the distance in an instant. Just as Dante reached for his communicator to call for help, Alisa snatched it right out of his hand before he could say a word. Alisa said coldly, "You aren't the only one who knows how to use magic." As soon as she finished speaking, that stone, the one that couldn't even be shattered by magic, was. She crushed it into pieces with her bare hands. Dante cried out in agony. "Do you have any idea how expensive that was? You just crushed it like that?" Alisa asked nonchalantly. "If the quality is this poor, are you really going to blame me?" Dante was in total despair. With the communicator destroyed, he had no way to call for help. If he teleported back to the palace now, Alisa would definitely slip away. The situation was completely out of control. Realizing that force wouldn't work, Dante decided to change tactics and try to reason with her. But Alisa wasn't buying it. She coldly reminded him, "The Emperor has wanted me gone for a long time. If I leave, I'm just giving him what he wants. Don't waste your breath. Even if you drag me back now, he'll just kick me out again." Dante quickly waved his hands to explain, "You've really got it wrong. This time, the Emperor personally ordered me to find you." Alisa stopped in her tracks, looking surprised. "He actually sent someone to find me?" But when Alisa pressed for the reason, Dante gave an awkward laugh. "Well, the Emperor just said to find you. He didn't say a single word about why." The tense atmosphere suddenly turned awkward. It turned out Dante was just a clueless errand boy himself. Dante started guessing to himself, "Since you're a grand mage, the Emperor must be desperate to find you because losing a top-tier fighter is a huge blow to the country." Alisa suddenly realized something. She remembered something very important. The Alliance Conference was about to begin. This wasn't just any ordinary meeting. Every nation would be showing off their latest magic. In plain terms, it was a political game using magic as a bargaining chip. This was especially significant for Eric. This would be his first official appearance on the international stage as Emperor. If the Grand Mage wasn't there, his debut would be a total disaster. Alisa knew deep down that if Eric was only looking for her because of the Alliance conference, she had even less reason to go back. Dante was stunned, stuttering. Why? Alisa told him calmly, you can just go to that meeting for me. It's not that hard to handle. Dante tried one last desperate attempt. If you aren't there, how is the meeting supposed to proceed? Alisa let out a cold laugh. If the Emperor can't even run a meeting without me, then he doesn't deserve to sit on that throne. These words left Dante speechless, and he could only suffer in silence. In truth, there was one thing Alisa didn't say. If Eric was worried about her defecting to an enemy nation, he didn't need to be. No matter what, she would never betray the kindness the late Emperor had shown her. After saying her piece, Alisa turned and walked away, leaving Dante behind, shouting desperately for her to wait. Dante still wouldn't give up. He leaned in and whispered, I don't think the Emperor is just looking for you because of that meeting. You know how he is. He's incredibly protective of his own. Even though he treats me like trash, the moment your name comes up, his attitude is completely different. Thinking back to their childhood, Dante felt a wave of resentment. That guy has never stopped looking down on me since we were kids. He's like an endless, moody teenager. Just as Dante was getting into his rant, Alisa suddenly stopped and called him by his full name. She told him coldly, the reason I stayed behind wasn't because of some childhood promise. Alisa turned her head to look at the shadows in the distance, whispering, the Emperor. As the supreme ruler of the Empire, Eric's marriage should have been a top priority, yet he had been putting it off for years. Who could have imagined it would end up like this? The heavy rain couldn't wash away the blood on the ground, and it certainly couldn't wash away the rift between them. Eric looked at Alisa, his voice low and heavy. You shouldn't have appeared here. Before Eric could finish, he said that Alisa shouldn't have appeared in this palace from the very beginning. Alisa asked Dante a question. You've been in the palace for so long, you must have heard that the late Emperor originally wanted me to be the Empress. Dante smiled after hearing this. Of course I know that. Alisa then asked a question that left Dante unable to answer. If the late Emperor had already chosen her to be Empress, why wasn't she even the crown princess in the end? Dante finally realized it. Something really was wrong. The late Emperor Bernhard was a man of his word. Once he set a rule, there was no turning back. If even he had to back down, there was only one truth. It wasn't that the late Emperor changed his mind, but that someone involved simply didn't want to get married. Given Alisa's easygoing personality, the one who refused definitely wasn't her. The truth finally came to light. It turned out the person who had been rejecting the engagement all these years was Eric. When he was a child, he said he didn't like Alisa. When he was older, he said she was too young. By the time he was an adult, he actually said Alisa wasn't ready. Dante finally understood. Alisa's decision to leave back then wasn't because she didn't want to marry, but to accommodate Eric, who had been avoiding it all along. But the irony was that now, Eric was acting like a madman, swearing he had to bring her back. Dante was speechless. What kind of mess was this? If Eric weren't his boss, he would have walked away right now. Dante sighed to himself. No matter what happened in the past, his mission was to bring Alisa back to the palace. He tentatively tried to persuade her. Eric is desperate to see you now. Maybe his feelings have changed. Let's just go back and see. But when Alisa heard this, her tone turned chilling. That is absolutely impossible. If I go back now, he'll just kick me out again immediately. Dante still didn't understand. Even if they had their differences, they had so many years of history. How could Eric truly hate her? Alisa was silent for a moment, then suddenly mentioned a date. Do you remember? The day the expedition team was attacked by monsters and forced to retreat? As soon as those words were spoken, Dante froze. The past he had tried so hard to bury was finally being unearthed. It was a nightmare no one wanted to talk about. The scene of the monster attack on the Zealand plains was too horrific to look at. Although Alisa arrived in the end and used her powerful magic to stop the situation from getting worse, the late Emperor Bernhard, who had blocked the attack head-on, suffered fatal injuries and didn't make it through the following spring. To Alisa, the late Emperor was like her own father. She never dared to touch that memory. But she had to tell Dante now. On the day the late Emperor passed away, Eric said something to her personally. That was the beginning of the end. Eric had actually told her, you shouldn't have appeared in the palace from the very beginning. Hearing this, Dante cursed his boss 1,000 times in his head. What was that madman Eric thinking? He said something so heartless, broke her heart, and drove her away, and now he had the nerve to order me to bring her back? Alisa had moved on. She urged Dante to give up, saying the Empire was full of talent and didn't need an outsider like her. Dante hesitated, then couldn't help but say, the Empire definitely needs a talented mage like you. Who says the Empire doesn't need me? Alisa suddenly patted Dante on the shoulder and said earnestly, the Empire still has you. I've always thought highly of your abilities. Dante was stunned. Alisa, who usually looked at everyone like they were idiots, was actually praising him. It was like the sun rising in the west. Before he could enjoy it for long, Alisa showed her true colors. Since you're so talented, I'll leave all these chores to you. It turned out all that flattery was just a setup to dump the mess on him. Dante finally realized what was happening. He grabbed Alisa as she tried to slip away and asked how she could dump the work so naturally. Alisa looked innocent, as if she hadn't been the one setting the trap. Alisa's plan was so obvious, it was practically hitting Dante in the face. She wanted him to take over as the chief grand mage. Dante exploded. This wasn't a promotion. It was a life sentence with no way out. He knew Eric too well. Once he took on this job, the Emperor would never let him resign. He'd force him to do the work of two people. Even though Alisa kept tempting him with money, Dante was clear-headed this time. You need to be alive to spend money, and he didn't want to die from overwork. He turned the tables and suggested that Alisa just go find Eric, slap him in the face, and announce she was calling off the engagement. Wouldn't that let her stay on the job? Alisa was actually tempted for a second, even imagining the cool scene of her causing a scene at the engagement. But then she thought about Eric's temper. If she really did that, she'd probably spend the rest of her life in a dungeon. Alisa was still feeding Dante lies, talking about how she'd arrange a mountain of work for him later. But because she had cast a soundproofing spell, she didn't notice that the innkeeper, Jonathan, was terrified. Jonathan pointed at the door, unable to get a full sentence out, just repeating, "Something happened outside." Alisa finally reacted and turned to the door, only to see black smoke creeping in through the cracks. A giant claw shattered the door, and the black smoke slithered in like a poisonous snake. Dante was stunned. He couldn't even tell what kind of monster it was. But in that instant, as Alisa stared at the black smoke, horrific images flashed through her mind. A figure lying in a pool of blood, a broken sword stained red. These fragments of memory pierced her consciousness like needles. Alisa froze, as if she couldn't hear anything from the outside world. She had fallen into some kind of terrifying hallucination. Dante realized something was wrong and shouted her name anxiously, but Alisa couldn't give any response. As expected, the thing she feared most had happened. Alisa looked at the black smoke, and she already had her answer. The giant beast before them was taller than the building, its blood-red eyes filled with violent intent. Alisa recognized it instantly. It was the same monster that had wreaked havoc on the Zealand plains. Who could have imagined this monster would actually appear? Dante shouted in fear, "Is this the legendary hide?" Alisa asked coldly, "Did you summon it?" Dante quickly retorted, "There's no such magic. How could a monster listen to anyone?" But he soon realized things were even more bizarre than he imagined. A creature this huge had appeared in the city, yet there wasn't a sound. This deathly silence was the most terrifying part of all. Alisa calmly explains the nature of this monster. It actually has the ability to turn invisible. Ordinary people can't see it at all. Since the innkeeper could see it, it means the creature had entered a physical state, and the way it was moving inside his clothes clearly shows he was being controlled. Dante is completely stunned. Could it be that summoning monsters isn't just a joke? Alisa looks into the distance and says that as long as you master the right incantations, nothing is impossible. But the strange thing is, if the monster was placed here, why hasn't it attacked yet? Just then, Alisa notices something. Something is wrong. She points ahead and asks Dante, "Do you see that?" Dante looks confused. "Are you talking about that huge shadow? I can see it clearly." Alisa's heart sinks. Oh no, it seems Leonard can't see it at all. Is this an illusion, or is it actually happening? The figure in the black robe wears a chilling smile as a blinding light erupts from the ground. Dante stands behind, completely dumbfounded, having no idea what just happened. In that instant, the once arrogant monster lets out a shrill, miserable scream. Dante is now completely panicked, loudly questioning Alisa why she attacked so suddenly and alerted the enemy. Alisa is also annoyed. That last strike actually missed and failed to finish the problem off. Now, the once quiet monster is completely enraged, struggling and roaring wildly. Dante shouts, "Quick, lure it out of the city, or the whole place will be destroyed." But Alisa has no intention of retreating. She strikes back with a lightning attack even more terrifying than the last, descending from the sky. Dante stops mid-sentence, stunned. This isn't a situation that needs luring away. She's clearly planning to send it to the afterlife right here. Who would have thought that the monster, which seemed invincible just a moment ago, would be taken out by Alisa in one hit? Dante is left speechless on the sidelines. Her combat power is simply absurd. But before anyone can breathe a sigh of relief, the innkeeper, Jonathan, completely breaks down. Looking at his house, now reduced to ruins, his heart is bleeding. Although Alisa apologizes, her mind isn't on the house at all. She's thinking about that strange magic. It can summon monsters and achieve perfect invisibility. These methods are unheard of. Who exactly is pulling the strings behind all this? That fleeting black shadow, could it really be him? Looking at the destroyed inn, Jonathan cries his heart out. This was his entire life savings, earned through years of hard work. Dante tries to comfort him, but it's no use. After all, anyone would be devastated by such a loss. Just then, Alisa steps forward without a word and instantly spreads out a massive blue magic circle. The scene that follows makes everyone hold their breath. The shattered wooden beams and bricks begin to fly on their own. This isn't just a simple repair, it's a miracle performed on the spot. The entire inn rapidly reconstructs within the light. Looking at the house, now as good as new, Dante is completely questioning reality. He's never even heard of this kind of magic. Alisa looks at the shocked Dante and calmly reveals the truth. You've never seen this magic because it was created by Eric herself. If Alisa is a genius at casting, then Eric is the mad scientist of the magic world. She can derive complex formulas from thin air, and even invent brand new magical artifacts. To protect her safety, this talent has always been kept top secret. Only a few people closest to her know, and Alisa is one of them. Dante is crushed after hearing this. If it's a new technique invented recently, why is he, an old acquaintance, kept in the dark? Shouldn't he be the first to know? Watching the frantic Dante, Alisa coldly twists the knife, probably because Eric didn't want to tell you at all. As soon as the battle ends, Alisa is in a rush to leave, even trying to pin all the credit for killing the monster on Dante. Dante has no interest in taking the credit. He stops Alisa and tries to persuade her to return to the palace, saying it's too dangerous out here. But Alisa's mind is made up, she replies coldly. Since Eric wants me to disappear, I'll fulfill her wish. Dante is left speechless. He knows that once Alisa makes a decision, no one can change her mind. But he can't help but ask, if you really leave, what will we use to fight if we encounter this kind of monster again? Dante reaches out to stop Alisa. She analyzes the situation seriously. There are no coincidences in this world. Why did the monster appear right in front of us? This is clearly a carefully planned conspiracy. Just as you suspected, if this monster was truly summoned, the depths of this plot are unfathomable. What if that mastermind is a sworn enemy of the Cadian Empire, just waiting to stab us in the back? If you leave now, the situation might truly become unmanageable. Dante's words grow heavier. If this attack is just the beginning, the next target could very well be the palace. He admits he has his own motives, but the monster appearing precisely when two top-tier fighters were present suggests a much larger conspiracy. Dante looks at the silent Alisa, his tone full of worry. The mages in the palace can't be relied upon. Having a beauty stationed at the palace is like a ticking time bomb. Alisa doesn't say anything, but she already knows he's right. Some problems can only be solved by her. But she is more worried about someone else, that mysterious expert who could evade her perception. If that person is truly an enemy of the Empire, the real crisis might have only just begun. Alisa's mind flashes to the most terrifying scenario. What if the tragedy of the Zealand Plains repeats itself, and this time, it's Eric lying in a pool of blood? She ultimately can't just stand by and do nothing. Even if there's only a 1 in 10,000 chance, she can't afford to gamble. Just as Dante is about to give up, Alisa suddenly relents. She agrees to return to the palace. Before Dante can celebrate for too long, Alisa adds, I'll return, but you must agree to one condition. If she's going back, it's going to be on her terms. Who would have thought she'd ever step foot in a place like this? Everything about it feels strange. Dante asks with a smile, is this your first time here? Before Alisa can react, the scene before her eyes changes instantly. This isn't an ordinary room. Welcome. This is the Leonard family archive, Alisa asks while searching. Why did you suddenly want to come to a place like this? Dante smiles and says, although I'm not as favored as you, as a friend of Eric, I do have some privileges. Alisa stares at what he's holding. Is that the legendary binding contract scroll? This is Eric's masterpiece. Once you sign your name, you're handing your life over to the other party. If anyone dares to go back on their word, the price is their own life. Dante shakes the paper. If we're going to talk about cooperation, isn't this necessary? Alisa nods. Indeed, with this life insurance policy, no one would dare to harbor any bad intentions. Alisa is a bit suspicious. Hasn't Eric kept this under wraps? Dante explains with a smile. This is just an early prototype. Eric insisted I test it first to see if there were any side effects. Although it's just a trial version, since it comes from a genius, it surely won't cause any major disasters. But Dante knows deep down that he can't even fool himself. In the current situation, Alisa clearly has the upper hand. If she were to suddenly disappear one day, this deal would be a total bust. So no matter what, he has to leave himself a way out. Dante drops the smile and picks up a quill. If we're going to sign this, we need to discuss the consequences of breaking the contract. Alisa immediately raises the stakes, setting the penalty directly to Dante's life. Dante can't sit still. Isn't this punishment a bit too heavy? Alisa remains calm. As long as you don't plan on breaking the contract, you have nothing to worry about. Now, bet your life on it. Dante eventually compromises, though he feels he'll definitely regret this later and want to bang his head against a wall. Alisa lays out her conditions. Dante must never reveal her whereabouts and must regularly send over intelligence from the palace, word for word. Dante sneers after hearing this. Since you've made your demands, I have one to add. From today on, you must help me share the burden of those annoying official duties, especially the endless paperwork. It's all yours now. That's a clever plan. Dante intends to sneak the documents out and let Alisa do the work, so he doesn't have to attack, and he can finally be free from overtime. Alisa is still worried about her whereabouts being exposed, but Dante promises that as long as this contract is signed, he can handle all the details. The contract clearly states that Dante must keep secrets and provide intelligence, while Alisa must handle his official duties. The most important clause is that whoever breaks the contract pays with their life. But just as Dante is feeling smug, Alisa suddenly calls him by his full name in a cold tone. She warns him not to try any tricks in front of her. She sees right through the loopholes in the contract, demanding the first clause be rewritten and even adding a death order, absolutely forbidding anyone related to Eric from stepping foot into her room. Dante is completely out of luck. He had planned to find a loophole to secretly tip off Eric, but his perfect plan collapsed before it even started. Dante is completely broken. He realizes that according to the terms Alisa modified, he's lost everything. This isn't a deal. It's basically handing over his life for nothing. But Alisa is unmoved, even coldly reminding him that as long as she stays here, Dante should be satisfied. Although he's unwilling, looking at that pile of unfinished paperwork, Dante finally gives in. He grits his teeth and signs the contract, if only to work a little less overtime. As the light of the contract glows, this unequal transaction takes effect. Alisa looks at the scroll in her hand with a winning smile. She softly calls Dante's full name. From this moment on, their fates are locked together. As for whether this brings fortune or disaster, Dante will have to fend for himself. The scene shifts back to the palace. Eric is sitting at the desk, ready to hold someone accountable. She gave Dante plenty of time to find Alisa. And what was the result? He brought back some inexplicable monster. Facing Eric's questioning, Dante tries desperately to explain that the big black creature suddenly appeared and almost scared him to death. Eric sneers. She clearly doesn't believe a word of it. She knows Alisa too well. How could people like them possibly catch a monster like that? She even suspects that Alisa set up a trap so they could return and report back. After all, if they had really discovered her whereabouts, they wouldn't dare hide it from her. Although he temporarily avoided suspicion, Dante knows better than anyone that in front of an old fox like Eric, escaping with his life is already a stroke of extreme luck. Eric had already made up her mind to give Dante more time, no matter what, to find Alisa. But Dante suddenly speaks up to stop her, reminding her that the delegation from the Allied Nations arrives today. The position of Chief Archmage is still vacant, and if Eric, the backbone of the palace, isn't there, the situation could spiral out of control. Dante suggests putting the search on hold until the diplomatic meeting is over. But no sooner had he said it than Eric's expression shifted. He blurted out that Alisa was the only one who truly mattered. Before he could finish, he froze. He realized that such a loss of emotional control was something that should never happen to him. He fell silent for a moment, admitting to himself that he had lost his composure. Ultimately, his reason prevailed, and he decided to put the search plans on hold, though he did tell Dante to return to his post. Dante is in a real bind now. Because of the contract's restrictions, he can't just blurt out the truth, but he's not willing to just let it go either. Since he can't write or speak it, he'll just have to risk his neck and use body language to drop some heavy hints. He takes a deep breath and begins his performance for Eric. Every second from here on out is a piece of carefully crafted, top-secret intel. He screams internally, "Your fiancée is at my place right now. I'm taking great care of her, so hurry up and give me a long vacation and a massive bonus." Dante thinks his performance was absolutely perfect. Anyone who isn't an idiot should be able to get the message. Reality, however, is cruel. Eric just sits there, staring at him like he's a complete fool. After a long pause, Eric coldly spits out, "What on earth are you raving about?" Night falls, and the palace is deathly silent. Eric stands alone by the window, his mind filled with inescapable doubts. During the escape, was there anyone else besides Reina's knight? The report said it was a woman. When he heard that, Eric's heart was in total turmoil. For a fleeting moment, he even wondered if it would be better if that cloaked figure really was Alisa. But as soon as the thought surfaced, he began to feel terrified. He would rather that person not be her, because Hyde's appearance would only remind Alisa of that nightmare of that day that caused her so much pain. Late at night, Eric stays in his room alone, the shadow of that woman filling his mind. He can't help but wonder what Alisa was thinking when she left, and what she intends to do with her life now. He whispers the name softly, "Alisa, what are you thinking about at this very moment?" By the next day, the palace seems calm on the surface, but in reality, it's already in total chaos. No more monster sightings lately, but the scholars are all whispering that those things were summoned on purpose. Dante, however, is distracted, his eyes unfocused. Eric slams his hand on the table. "Dante Leonard." The outburst scares the life out of Dante, who quickly snaps out of his daze and stammers that he's listening. Eric sees right through Dante's recent distraction. He coldly reminds him that even for friends, there's a limit to this kind of behavior. Since the monsters haven't reappeared, the investigation is on hold. The next big priority is the upcoming Allied Nations Conference. Dante quickly pivots to report that the delegations from Levon and Nox have already arrived at the palace, but the situation with Nox is a bit unusual. They didn't send their first-in-line heir. Instead, they sent their unmarried second princess. The motive behind this is likely not so simple. They're being way too obvious. Dante can't help but grumble. Eric still has a fiancée, yet they're acting this brazenly. Eric replies offhandedly, "Maybe she's just here for the sightseeing." Even Dante doesn't buy that. How could Nox possibly be that idle? Besides, the Archmage has been missing for so long. Anyone can see this isn't just a simple vacation. Even a fool could guess that something has gone wrong. Now, everyone is watching, just waiting for Eric to announce the total dissolution of his engagement. Eric coldly asks what Dante actually wants him to do. Dante perks up, his internal gears turning rapidly. He thinks ending the engagement is a great idea. That way, he can return to his original post, and Alisa can return to the palace as a matter of course. It's a win-win. So, he boldly suggests, since you can't hide it, why not just announce the engagement is void? It'll save everyone the trouble. You never liked Elizabeth from the start anyway. Eric's expression darkens as he listens. He originally wanted to explain something, but seeing Dante's look, he swallows his words. Talking to this idiot is just a waste of time. This isn't the kind of thing he should be discussing with him anyway. Whether it's marriage or a breakup, Eric doesn't care about the rumors outside. Regarding this engagement, no matter what others say, there is only one person who can truly make the decision. And that is Alisa. Only her thoughts truly matter to him. But where is she now, and what is she doing? That is the answer he wants most of all. Just as everyone is looking for her, a sound erupts in the library. A loud crash. Dante is carrying a thick stack of books when he loses his footing and takes a nasty spill. Papers fly everywhere, and the heavy books slam into the floor, kicking up a cloud of dust. Dante lies there in a heap, dazed and disheveled. Before he can even crawl up, a disdainful voice reaches his ears. Alisa stands gracefully before him, her tone full of mockery. Your stamina is terrible. You should really start exercising more. Looking at the woman who has been missing for so long, Dante can only offer a helpless, bitter smile. Well, she's found, but she's still the same old Alisa. Because of the previous monster incident, Alisa couldn't stay at the inn. At Dante's strong suggestion, she moved into Reina's mansion. It's called borrowing space, but in reality, she's there as free labor. Per their agreement, Alisa helps Dante process the mountain of paperwork. Looking at the desk full of documents, Alisa can't help but complain. So much work today, Dante feels even more aggrieved. I've been buried in backlogged work just trying to find you. Alisa ignores his complaining and asks for a specific book. Dante hands it over. But to his surprise, Alisa falls silent after taking the book. Her expression makes Dante's heart skip a beat. Could there be some unspeakable secret hidden in this book? As he hands it over, Dante can't help but fish for credit, saying that to get this new book, he had to zone out during a meeting and got scolded by Eric in front of everyone. But Alisa isn't listening to his grievances. She catches the keyword and immediately asks if there have been any new developments in today's meeting. Dante hesitates for a long time before finally breaking the bad news. The authorities have decided to abandon the investigation entirely. Alisa is frantic now. She had warned everyone that besides Hyde, there was a mysterious person with black hair and red eyes at the scene. How could they just let such a dangerous person go? Dante can only shrug helplessly, saying that with the Allied Nations conference approaching, the higher-ups simply don't have the manpower to deal with these shadows. Since Alisa hasn't shown her face, and he's been tied up with the conference, there simply aren't enough investigators to go around. Looking at the thick ancient texts on the table, Alisa knows full well that she won't find the truth just by flipping through books. Since she can't rely on the authorities, she decides to get to the bottom of this herself. But just then, Dante smiles mysteriously and says that, actually, Nox has already started working behind the scenes. It turns out they aren't messing around. They are eyeing Eric's throne, and even sent the second princess as the head of the delegation. Hearing this, Alisa is stunned. Dante says lightly that the nation's obsession with the new empress has already overshadowed the conference itself, and only Eric is suffering for it. In his view, as long as this momentum continues, Eric will soon be able to break the engagement. Once he marries the new empress, Alisa can return to the palace with a legitimate status. Dante tells her to hang in there a little longer, then turns to leave, as there's still a pile of work waiting for him. Alisa seems to think of something and hurriedly calls out to him. But before she can finish, Dante's figure has already vanished into the teleportation circle. In the empty study, Alisa is left alone, watching the light fade from the floor. Her expression turns complex. Some things, after all, remained unsaid. Alisa bows her head in silence for a long time. She keeps telling herself that since she has already left that place, the palace's power struggles have nothing to do with her anymore. Rather than worrying about someone else's engagement, she should focus on these unsolved magical puzzles. She returns to her desk, her gaze falling on that scroll covered in complex runes. The priority now is to focus on more important matters. Eric walks alone through the corridor. The palace is now quiet enough to feel unsettling. The late emperor passed away at the turn of winter and spring, and in the blink of an eye, spring has fully arrived. He remembers that when they were children, the back garden was always the liveliest place in this weather. Back then, Alisa and Eric always loved to sit together and read. It's a pity those days are gone forever. Crisp footsteps break the silence of the hallway. Primavera bows gracefully and speaks first. Greetings, Emperor of Kadian. I am Primavera Nox. Eric stops, his tone tinged with scrutiny. How does a princess end up alone in the main palace corridor? She explains slowly that she was trying to get to the conference room but got lost along the way. Eric coldly reminds her that the conference hall is on the other side of the palace and that she should have a dedicated escort. Primavera just smiles, saying she must have really misremembered the direction. Eric is suspicious. Rumor has it this princess is a recluse who rarely appears in social settings, but she doesn't seem simple at all. Seeing her act so brazenly, Eric knows this is the true face of Princess Primavera. She smiles and suggests, "Could I ask the Emperor to personally show me the way?" Eric replies coldly, "There are eyes everywhere in this palace." Primavera doesn't care at all. Instead, she hits a sore spot. The whole world knows that Kadian's archmage has gone missing. Since your backing is gone, your majesty must find some new political leverage. Those scrutinizing eyes carry undisguised calculation, as if she is weighing the residual value of a commodity to use as a bargaining chip. Eric stares at the woman, finding it laughable. What does she take the emperor for, some soft pushover? She actually dared to say that to my face. A young, untalented person on the throne, plus the disappearance of the archmage Alisa, the empire's military strength is indeed at its weakest. Eric stops and looks directly at Primavera. Princess, I am well aware that I am an unreliable emperor. Is that why you dare to be so presumptuous in front of me? Primavera is silenced by his presence and can only stammer an explanation. Eric turns away, his tone returning to cold indifference. I'll pretend I didn't see your rudeness today. After all, you represent an ally, and I'll give you that much respect. Eric gives one final warning. That courtesy won't last forever. With that, he turns and leaves, leaving Primavera standing alone in the empty corridor. Just then, shouts come from afar. It's Marin rushing over. Seeing Marin's state, Eric is clearly surprised. Marin ignores protocol, hurriedly stops Eric, and breaks news that could shake the entire palace. They have completely lost contact with the Dexian region. They sent people to investigate, only to find out the entire team was targeted by monsters on the road. Eric simply couldn't believe his ears. No attacks? What's even more bizarre is that the incident happened in the Zealand Plains, the one place that should have been the safest. The current situation is dire. Since it happened right on the border, everyone is going to assume we're the ones pulling the strings. Dante analyzed the situation calmly. To clear their names, they had to get to the bottom of this before things spiraled out of control. He looked at Dante and said, Dante, you promised me that if anything happened in the palace, you'd come to me for help immediately. Dante smiled after hearing this and countered, why do you think I rushed over here so quickly? He stepped forward and took Elisa's hand, his expression filled with unprecedented seriousness. I came here to ask for your help. If we're going to work together, let's set a contract first. Dante's fingers flickered. A flash of light passed through. He officially granted Elisa permission to leave temporarily to handle this thorny problem. He asked half-jokingly, you aren't going to take this chance to run off, are you? Elisa replied firmly, Cardian's safety is at stake. I'm not going anywhere. Dante nodded and instructed her to wait an hour before leaving to avoid being spotted. Before leaving, he didn't forget to remind her to wear that cloak to hide her identity. Left alone in the room, Elisa gripped the fabric in her hands tightly, whispering the name to herself. The Zealand Plains. What on earth happened there? Could it be that something happened there again? Accompanied by the light of the teleportation array, Elisa appeared instantly above the Zealand Plains. But strangely, the magic residue in the air was incredibly faint. It seems quite a bit of time has passed since the attack occurred. She slowly descended into the ruins. The surroundings were deathly silent, with only the shattered remains of carriages scattered across the desolate plains. Elisa leaned down to inspect the tracks on the ground, and they made her stop in her tracks. These weren't the footprints of ordinary monsters, they were left by hides. Something is wrong. This definitely wasn't a simple accident. It doesn't make any sense. We already conducted a massive purge of this area. There shouldn't be this many monsters left. Elisa looked at the footprints covering the ground, and a terrifying thought emerged. Could it be that someone summoned all of these on purpose? Just then, the ground began to shake violently. Elisa sensed that something was wrong. If these monsters had been hiding nearby, their massive size and magical signature would have made it impossible to stay hidden. Unless they were just teleported here, this means the mastermind is nearby. Since the enemy dared to show their face, Elisa had no intention of letting them go. She was prepared. She wouldn't let those guys slip away silently like last time. But before she could act, a sound came from the distance. A shrill, miserable scream, followed by a violent explosion. It shot up into the sky. Elisa froze. Why does that sound so familiar? Dante? The once peaceful night was suddenly shattered. Dante couldn't help but complain. This is insane. Where are these monsters even coming from? And there are an absurd amount of them. They just won't stop coming. This is a huge problem. He's been completely surrounded. When Elisa first mentioned the summoning of monsters, Dante hadn't taken it seriously, but now, seeing these things appear with his own eyes, he had no choice but to believe it. Just then, a subordinate ran over in a panic, reporting that the monsters could turn invisible. They couldn't track their positions at all. This was trouble. The enemy was in the shadows while they were in the light. Aside from dodging, there was nothing else they could do. Dante was fuming. Being forced into a defensive position like this was a total humiliation. It seemed there was no other choice. Dante steeled himself and loudly ordered everyone to prepare for a teleportation retreat. He planned to stay behind alone to cover their escape. His subordinates were stunned. Staying behind now was basically a death sentence. Dante acted completely calm, urging them to leave quickly. In reality, he was calculating. As soon as these meddlesome subordinates left, Elisa could show up to help. To make the act convincing, he even bragged that he could handle these small fry monsters all by himself. His subordinates were simple-minded enough to be swayed by Dante's words, treating him like a great hero. Before leaving, they were crying and begging him to make sure he survived. Dante kept a steady face, but inside, he was screaming. If these people didn't leave soon, he wouldn't be able to keep up the act. As soon as his subordinates left, he couldn't hold on any longer. A massive impact hit him, knocking him straight to the ground. Just when Dante was about to lose hope, the air around him suddenly changed. Accompanied by a sky full of lily petals, Alisa finally appeared. Dante blurted out, "Alisa!" His true savior had finally arrived at the last possible moment. "You were right about one thing," Alisa said. She had to admit that someone was indeed pulling the strings behind these monsters. Looking at the carnage, she wondered, did the enemy go through all this trouble just to make things look bad? She sneered. If she had that kind of power, she would have taken people straight to the palace instead of wasting time here. But regardless of the enemy's plan, the mission remained the same. Alisa stared at the incoming pack of wolves and the cold-blooded soldiers. Let's clear out these beasts first, then find the mastermind. Alisa was quite the delegator. She casually assigned half the monsters to Dante, telling him to have fun while she went to handle some private business. Dante was stunned. Before he could react, Alisa had already turned and walked away, not forgetting to remind him that these monsters weren't easy to deal with. Watching Alisa's retreating figure, Dante could only sigh helplessly. Fine, since it had come to this, there was no point in backing down. He was actually fired up. He would take this opportunity to show that guy Eric what he could do and prove he could handle the whole field by himself. Dante's magic erupted. The real battle had finally begun. Alisa knew very well that Dante's skills weren't enough for a situation of this scale. If he had to face all these monsters at once, things would definitely go wrong. But the problem was, if she used her full power now, the commotion would be too great and cause her trouble later. So, those flashy spells were absolutely off limits. Alisa's eyes turned cold, and her fingers flicked. Since she couldn't use brute force, she'd find a more efficient way. She planned to bypass their defenses and destroy them from the inside, targeting the monsters' hearts. One down, next one, just as Alisa was about to relax. A sinister voice came from behind her. The guy had crept up on her like a ghost, completely silent. Before the enemy could finish speaking, Alisa countered with a magic circle. A blinding light exploded instantly. It sent the cloaked attacker flying into the air. The attacker laughed and greeted her, asking if she remembered that this was their second meeting. Alisa's tone held a hint of surprise. "Looking at how calm you are, I guess you knew I'd show up," the attacker replied coldly. "That's right, I've been waiting for you for a long time." The attacker suddenly lowered his voice and dropped a bombshell. "You were there when that incident happened all those years ago, weren't you?" Alisa froze completely. Bernhard's terrified face flashed through her mind. Those sealed memories all came flooding back at once. The attacker watched her reaction and laughed even more arrogantly. "This is getting interesting. So, you saw it all along." Alisa could no longer suppress her rage and roared at him. "So, you were the mastermind behind everything back then." Terrifying flames swept across the field. This old debt had to be settled today. The truth was finally out. This man in front of her was the one who personally killed Bern, causing his majesty. If it weren't for him, Bernhard wouldn't have left so soon, and Eric wouldn't have said those heartless things to her. If that accident hadn't happened, the three of them should still be living peaceful lives in the palace. But the attacker had destroyed it all. Their beautiful future was shattered into nothing. Facing Alisa's overwhelming rage, the attacker simply replied lightly, "Is there some kind of misunderstanding here?" The attacker actually tried to shift the blame, saying he didn't cause that incident, though he admitted he had orchestrated the schemes that followed. Facing Alisa's full-powered magic, the attacker didn't even dodge, even turning on the mockery, thinking Alisa's level was far too low. In his eyes, her attack patterns were too predictable. Aside from having a bit of power, they posed no real threat. The attacker's figure began to fade. Before leaving, he didn't forget to twist the knife. "I hope you'll be a bit smarter next time we meet." The attacker vanished just like that, leaving only a pile of shattered ice crystals. Alisa stood alone in the ruins, feeling completely lost. What was going on? What did those words even mean? What was happening? Before Dante could react, countless high-level offensive spells rained down like a storm. The moment the attack stopped, the monsters that had been swarming the area suddenly vanished. Even if I told Eric, he probably wouldn't believe me. He might even think I was hallucinating. After all, that terrifying power came from Alisa's direction. It's just too absurd. Dante stopped and looked at the devastation. He hurriedly shouted, "Alisa, are you okay?" The power of those spells was absurdly strong. As he ran toward her, he couldn't help but ask, what on earth is going on? How did things turn out like this? But when he got close, the Alisa standing before him left him completely stunned. She was radiating a suffocating pressure, as if she were a completely different person. Alisa spoke softly, "Dante." That call threw Dante off balance. He instinctively avoided her gaze and stammered, You should put your cloak back on. Don't let anyone else see you." Alisa finally realized and began to adjust her clothes, unhurried. But Dante's heart was already in turmoil. This is crazy. They had known each other for so long, and meeting usually felt as natural as breathing. Why was he acting so strange now? This inexplicable feeling of awkwardness made him afraid to look at her again. Dante tried to convince himself that his racing heart was just because he had been startled. Yes, that had to be it. It was just an illusion. But before he could recover, one sentence from Alisa made his expression change completely. She said she had just seen the person who summoned the monsters. Dante couldn't believe his eyes. How was this even possible? Eliza's casting speed was terrifying, yet that man dodged every single attack. Who was he, and what was he after? Eliza fell into deep thought. She remembered the man's parting words that he had finally found her. Everything that happened afterward had been part of his deliberate plan. Could it be that this chaos wasn't about Kadion at all, but aimed directly at me? No, that's not right. If that were the case, he would have attacked when he had the upper hand. Instead of killing me, he seemed more interested in playing around. His true target had been this place all along, Kadion. Eliza grabbed Dante. She said with complete sincerity, "I will never leave your side." Dante was so startled by this sudden confession that he nearly lost his soul. But the next second, Eliza showed her true colors. "So, can you grant me some leave so I can officially head out?" Dexing was sending people to the meeting again. Luckily, when they retreated, her subordinates found a survivor. This gave them a glimmer of hope in a situation that had seemed like a dead end. Dante pondered. The appearance of this survivor was a huge help. Dante felt like he was falling apart. Between the magical exhaustion and the sleepless night, he could barely sit still. All he wanted was a stimulant to keep from passing out on the spot. But Eric, sitting across from him, had no interest in his complaints. He held a report that had just arrived, his tone chillingly cold. He said, "The plains." Interesting news came back from there. During that battle, countless high-level spells rained down like a storm. That's not a volume of magic a normal person could produce. Eric put down the report, his gaze turning razor-sharp. He stared at Dante and asked the most lethal question. "Who exactly was the girl accompanying you at that time?" Dante was completely speechless. Dante's mind was a mess. He frantically calculated his options. If he told the truth, he'd die for breaking his oath. If he lied, it was treason against the royal family. It was a lose-lose situation. Seeing Dante struggle to get a word out, Eric's patience reached its limit. He asked coldly, "Is this question really that hard to answer?" Facing exposure, Dante steeled himself and shouted, "Even if I told you, you wouldn't know her. She has nothing to do with the palace." Eric let out a cold laugh. "Is there any important person in this world I don't know?" But after staring at Dante for a long time, he unexpectedly smiled and said he was willing to believe that explanation. Dante had saved his own skin, but Eric's look clearly meant there was more to it. Eric suddenly shifted his tone, his voice filled with unquestionable authority. "Since you make it sound so mysterious, bring that person to me." He wanted to see for himself just how capable this person who caused such a stir really was. Dante was on the verge of a breakdown. He covered his face and cursed that bastard under his breath. He ran back to Eliza, fuming. He ranted about how rotten Eric's personality was, saying if it weren't for his royal bloodline, he'd never want to see that face again. Eliza listened, stunned. She whispered, "Your Majesty's temper is bad, but isn't it a bit much to curse him like that?" Dante couldn't hear it. She shouted, "You're actually taking his side right now? I can't live like this." Dante was anxious, like an ant on a hot pan. He stared at Eliza and demanded, "Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused? That old fox Eric is convinced I'm hiding someone. The way he's looking at me, he's basically forcing me to hand you over." Dante grew more agitated, even suspecting Eliza was planning to give up. But Eliza just replied calmly, "Things aren't what you think." In that instant, a dazzling purple light burst forth. A massive magic circle slowly rotated beneath Eliza's feet. The pressure made the surrounding air freeze. Eliza said calmly that she had been researching this for so long, and now that she'd hit a bottleneck, it was time to act. Dante was stunned. He finally realized that the girl he'd been protecting was terrifyingly powerful. Eliza made a crazy decision. She would return to the palace, but this time, not as a great mage. Right before Dante's eyes, magic enveloped her, and her signature silver hair turned a vibrant red, as if scorched by fire. Dante was forced back by the power. He watched as the girl before him completely transformed into someone else in seconds. After the transformation, Eliza's eyes held a coldness like never before. She said, word by word, as someone other than Eliza, "Eliza, why did you always laugh like a madman when you were with him? If you laugh so easily, no one would ever suspect that person is you." Dante was still worried. He repeatedly urged Eliza to smile more in front of Eric. Although her appearance had completely changed, Dante knew that the unique aura Eliza possessed couldn't be hidden. He was most worried about her habits. If she slipped up and said something, her identity would be exposed immediately. Eliza thought these were minor details. She was confident she wouldn't be that reckless. But could a personality ingrained in one's bones really be erased by a disguise? Dante was going crazy. He even demanded that Eliza hide her gaze, or she'd be found out the moment she appeared. Eliza thought he was being overbearing, but for the sake of the big picture, she decided to listen to him for now. However, she was hiding an even bigger secret. She was certain Eric would never recognize her now, because the reason was something only she knew. Eliza felt Eric didn't care about her at all, so even if she acted suspiciously, that man would never look twice. Dante admitted that this top-tier transformation magic was unheard of, but looking at this perfect disguise, he felt a strange sense of dread. He felt as if a what-if was quietly growing in the shadows. Alisa had completely changed. She reminded Dante not to slip up from this moment on. She called herself Lucifort. Eric appeared. The pressure was suffocating. Is this the person you brought? Dante's heart was in his throat. If Alisa said one wrong word, it would truly cost him his life. Alisa revealed her new identity, but Eric's gaze was a death stare. He went straight to the point, questioning her relationship with Dante. Seeing they were about to be exposed, Dante had to bite the bullet and lie, claiming he kept her hidden to protect her. Eric just let out a cold laugh. Dante's heart sank. He feared the man didn't believe a single word. Dante felt he was doomed either way, even imagining what flowers to plant on his grave. But who would have thought Eric wouldn't play by the rules? Instead of pursuing it, he offered an olive branch, skipping all questioning and inviting Alisa to stay and work for him. Now everyone was stunned. Eric stared at Alisa, waiting for an answer. Alisa finally nodded. She swore her loyalty to Eric on the spot, promising to do her best for the Empire. Even if he ended up hating her, she had to keep going in this identity, because only then could she truly protect the person she wanted to protect. Eric was clearly satisfied with this result. Eric was being overly generous this time. Not only did he not make Alisa demonstrate her magic, but he suddenly started being sentimental, giving Dante a massive show of trust. The words "I have always relied on you" broke Dante down. After all, he was full of lies and felt so guilty he wanted to crawl into a hole. Eric even entrusted Alisa to him. Looking at his sincere smile, Dante could only offer an awkward laugh. This debt to the newcomer would probably never be repaid in this lifetime. Dante's conscience was truly pricking him. The more Eric trusted him, the more he felt like a fraud, even starting to blame the absent Alisa. Alisa watched from the side as he ranted and raved, hitting the nail on the head with one sentence. She said that while Dante complained, he actually hoped more than anyone that Eric would recognize her true self. Dante was speechless. His deepest, most hidden thought had been seen through by this woman at a glance. Alisa tried to tempt Dante with a new vacation, thinking he'd run off immediately. Who knew this guy would actually say he was enjoying life as it was? Dante was straightforward. With her help, things were much easier. He was even planning to cause some trouble for Eric. But Dante was serious this time. He rarely expressed his loyalty, emphasizing that he was definitely on Alisa's side. They were officially in the same boat. Alisa hadn't figured out what Dante was planning, but she decided to trust him once. As soon as that trust was built, he took the lead. Dante shouted from behind that he knew the way better, and told Alisa not to take the lead. Alisa didn't even look back, replying, "If you think it's slow, walk faster." In the royal library, Eric found a strange book he had never seen before. He was puzzled. How did a book like this end up here? Where did you find it? Alisa said the librarian lent it to her, saying it was something girls loved to read. But he quickly realized something was wrong. The book had no royal seal. It was clearly brought in privately. Eric asked what the book was about. Alisa looked at the book and said, "A common woman falls in love with an immortal man." Alisa spoiled the ending immediately. She said the woman in the story dies in the end. Eric was annoyed. Who tells a story like that, skipping the process and going straight to the ending? Alisa explained calmly, "Death isn't the end. The woman is reincarnated and reborn as a completely different person. When she grows up, they meet again, and the man recognizes her instantly, as if under a spell." Alisa thought it was illogical. Appearance and magic have both changed. How could he recognize her instantly? Eric countered, "Since magic exists in this world, what is impossible?" Eric suddenly mentioned his father, saying there were many things in this world more incredible than magic. Nothing was impossible. Just like us two people who never should have met, yet here we are, together every day. The miracle of fate was happening right before his eyes. This almost luxurious time together made him feel a bit dazed. Alisa looked at him and asked, "If it were you, even if appearance and magic changed, would you still recognize that person?" "If that person were you, I would recognize you instantly." Dante brought back a woman named Lucifort. From her looks to her magic, she had nothing to do with the missing Alisa. Although the woman before him had a new face, he knew better than anyone that he couldn't be wrong. Alisa, he didn't know why she had suddenly left, or why she had returned with a new identity, but as long as she was here, there was nowhere to hide. Since she was back and he had recognized her, Eric knew how to proceed. He had spent a long time alone, his mind filled with her shadow. Since fate gave him a second chance, he would never let go again. No matter what secret she was hiding, he swore he would never let her run away again. Alisa was calculating, needing a place further from the main park somewhere she could avoid Eric's gaze while still keeping an eye on the palace. Dante was annoyed by her nagging and said, "Fine, stop urging me. Don't you trust me to get things done?" Alisa, still uneasy, presses Dante on what his plan actually is. Dante doesn't even look back, telling her he's taking her to report to her new department right now. But as they walk, Alisa suddenly stops in her tracks. This direction isn't leading to some remote corner at all. Looking at the building ahead, Alisa's heart sinks. She was right. This direction is definitely wrong. Dante actually brought her here. Before she can react, a woman named Gabrielle rushes up to them with a beaming smile, introducing herself as the vice captain of the Magic Knights. This is a huge problem. This is the first Imperial Magic Knights, the home of the Empire's top elites, and their leader is none other than that difficult man, Dante. Word is that this vice captain is a tough character whom Dante personally recruited. Alisa wanted to find a quiet place to lay low, but instead, she's walked straight into the lion's den. Gabrielle is incredibly enthusiastic. She insists that Alisa call her by her nickname, Gabby, and keeps gushing about how cute Alisa's name is. Alisa's head is spinning. She thinks to herself that everyone Dante recruits is the same all high-energy weirdos. They're as noisy as a flock of birds chirping in her ear. As she leads the way, Gabrielle mentions that a newcomer joining the first Knights directly is unheard of. Now the whole squad is staring at Alisa, dying to know who she really is. But Gabrielle adds that no one dares to question Alisa's strength, since she has the backing of the captain, Dante himself. What's worse is that she was personally summoned to the palace by the Emperor, with the genius label attached to her. Alisa's plan to stay low profile is completely ruined. Gabrielle suddenly leans in close to Alisa's ear and drops a bombshell. She says that when she was at the Zealand Plains, she actually witnessed that scene with her own eyes. Alisa freezes. Could it be that the identity she wanted to hide most has been seen through by this woman she just met? Gabrielle sighs, remarking that no one but the legendary Archmage could have controlled magic at that level. But then Gabrielle smiles and says, I never imagined that person was you. You were covered head to toe in robes back then, but at least now you're finally getting some recognition. Just as Gabrielle is bragging about how all the knights are talking about Alisa, the door is suddenly kicked open. Dante storms in, his mouth already opening to shout that secret name. Luckily, he reacts fast enough to swallow the words. He quickly changes it to Lucy. This nearly scared Alisa to death. If he had slipped up here, all her previous efforts would have been for nothing. Dante plays it off well, saying he just finished reporting for work, and asks with feigned concern if Alisa understood everything Gabrielle told her. Alisa can only awkwardly reply, I guess I understood it. That I guess leaves Gabrielle standing there, completely stunned. Before Gabrielle can finish, a red-haired man suddenly rushes out and, without a word, wraps his arms around Alisa from behind. This overly familiar move shocks everyone in the room. The man holds onto Alisa tightly while complaining loudly, asking why they didn't greet the new recruit sooner. Dante is completely done with this. He orders the man to let go in an icy tone. The way he's acting so protective makes it clear to everyone that he's genuinely angry. But the man doesn't read the room at all. Instead, he teases the captain for being biased, saying their years of friendship don't compare to a newcomer. He doesn't realize that Alisa, trapped in his arms, is at her breaking point. Things are about to get ugly. Feeling the freezing killing intent in the air, the man's arrogance vanishes instantly. He quickly lets go and apologizes profusely. He laughs nervously, explaining he was just too excited after being the new guy in the squad for so long. He finally got to be a senior today. Without realizing it, it's already been 3 full days since Alisa infiltrated the Knights under a new identity. Even though she's technically a rookie, her presence puts immense pressure on everyone around her. A few colleagues are hiding behind some crates, whispering that they feel this newcomer is very hard to deal with. It's not that she has a bad temper, it's that even the captain speaks to her with such courtesy. The more they talk, the more wrong it feels. Being around her is like reporting to a superior. Despite being a new face, she carries the aura of a 10-year veteran. The whole squad has realized this newcomer is definitely not simple. The squad members whisper privately, thinking this girl got in through connections with the captain. Some even think that, in terms of skill, the captain is the one who should be taken care of. A woman can't take it anymore and interrupts their fantasies. During that battle on the plains, she saw with her own eyes what true dimensional level combat looked like. The scale of that magic and the speed of her casting weren't things an ordinary person could learn unless she was that archmage, Alisa. As soon as that name is spoken, the air freezes. The woman realizes she just mentioned the forbidden name. She quickly shuts her mouth and apologizes. Although they have sharp tongues, these knights actually respect her. They think the new girl has a good character and works incredibly hard. Whatever she's asked to do, she completes it better than expected. The only regret is that she's too mysterious. She never mentions her private life, making it impossible for anyone to get close to her. Just as they are chatting away, a cold voice comes from behind them. Everyone freezes. Gabrielle walks over with a stern face and scolds her gossiping subordinates. Just because someone doesn't like talking about their private life isn't a reason to gossip behind their back. Now, they've been caught red-handed. Facing Gabrielle's questioning, the group quickly waves their hands in surrender, explaining they meant no harm. Gabrielle isn't buying it. She makes it clear, instead of staring at people who are working hard and trying to find fault, they should focus on their own work. Seeing everyone lower their heads in apology, she claps her hands, signaling that the matter is closed. After all, the upcoming alliance meeting is the real main event, and the preparation work is already piling up like a mountain. Seeing Gabrielle's high spirits, the group has no choice but to agree. After all, this major event is about to unfold right here in the palace. Dante has already broken down. He slumps into a pile of documents, muttering that he doesn't want to do this anymore. Alisa doesn't coddle him. She takes a thick book and hits him right on the head with it. She tells him off, reminding Dante that he can't just say such defeatist things. Now the whole squad is following his lead, crying and threatening to go on strike. Dante jumps from the hit, muttering that it's not his fault the workload is just too much. He rubs his head while staring at the book in Alisa's hand, asking where she dug that up. If there's anyone in the squad who's truly absurd, it's Marin. While others want to run when they see overtime, he's actually excited by the mountain of files. He carries books while muttering that today's workload is perfect, and even thoughtfully prepares a thick stack for Dante. Dante rolls his eyes. What he's more interested in is the strange book in Elisa's hand, Mysterious Human Psychology. He can't help but remark, "You're using this book as an excuse to find me, so there must be something big you want to discuss, right?" Elisa doesn't beat around the bush. She asks directly about the arrangements for the upcoming meeting and who is actually calling the shots on the VIP list. Dante is just about to explain that he hasn't delegated that power to anyone yet, when a familiar figure appears at the door. Speak of the devil. Eric has walked right in at this very moment. "Why are you so surprised?" Dante is so startled he nearly jumps out of his chair, blurting out, "Your Majesty." Eric looks at his guilty expression, his eyes full of suspicion, and asks if he has something to hide. Dante can only deny it, trying to turn the tables by asking why the Emperor, who rarely leaves his quarters, decided to visit today. Eric has a good excuse. He was nearby on business and decided to stop by to take him to lunch, since they had already agreed to it. Dante thinks to himself, "Take me to lunch? He's clearly just afraid I'll run away and came to catch me in the act." Before Dante can recover, Eric suddenly turns his head toward Elisa and asks in an icy tone, "Why were you asking about the VIP list just now?" Facing Eric's piercing gaze, Elisa remains calm. She replies casually that she was just curious, but she knows the situation is far more complex than it appears. The so-called alliance is just a product of tied interests. From the late Emperor Bernhard to the new Emperor Eric, this shift in power is the perfect time to drag opponents down. She will never allow anyone to harm Eric in the slightest during the meeting. Although she wants to intervene personally, her current identity is Lucy, an ordinary person who must never get involved in politics. She must keep this secret safe. Eric stares at her for a long time, then finally drops the pressure, his tone softening as he asks if they want to go grab a meal together. Elisa can't believe her ears. Eric actually brought them to such a luxurious restaurant. This meal is incredibly uncomfortable. Dante is even more restless. As he mechanically cuts his steak, his heart is pounding. Since when did this usually cold-blooded majesty become so kind? What is he planning? Eric, however, is calm, elegantly putting down his utensils and even offering a rare compliment. The food today is quite good. Before the two can relax, Eric's next words make Dante spit out his food. "From now on, the three of us will eat together often." Dante is completely broken. This deadly dinner arrangement is going to be a daily occurrence? Facing Eric's unconventional proposal, Elisa quickly finds an excuse to decline. She says she's just a newcomer, and if she's always eating with the top brass, people will inevitably say she's getting special treatment. Dante quickly tries to smooth things over too. After all, it's one thing for him, as her guide, to treat her, but if the Emperor himself is catering to a newcomer, it really doesn't look good. But who would have thought? Eric doesn't get angry. Instead, he shows a confident smile. He stares at Elisa, his tone flat but firm. "You're right. I am giving you special treatment." As soon as those words are spoken, the atmosphere at the table freezes. In truth, given Elisa's real identity, this treatment is far from enough. Eric looks at Elisa, knowing her true identity better than anyone. Since she wants to play this disguise game, he'll play along. He puts down his wineglass and calmly announces a decision. At the upcoming alliance meeting, Elisa will serve as Dante's personal assistant. Before the two can react, Eric adds, "Since it's a work requirement, won't it be perfectly natural for us to see each other often from now on?" Dante is completely numb. What is even happening right now?